It's time for the Newsmaker Show on News Talk AM 1480 WLEA.
Brian O'Neill here on a Friday with Dr. Robert Heinemann. So much going on in the news this week with the Supreme Court, the death of Antonin Scalia, and we had the back and forth between Donald Trump and Pope Francis. Then you've got South Carolina and the vote coming up there tomorrow. And with all these topics, I haven't said hello to Dr. Robert Heinemann. Hello, Dr. Robert Heinemann.
Well, it's about time, Brian. Hello.
Where do we start? Antonin Scalia?
Well, if you want to start with Justice Scalia, what do you have any thoughts there? Any questions? What's your...
You know, it's kind of interesting. I was talking to Dr. Christian Koff, and he kind of knew Scalia a little bit. They would email back and forth.
Right.
Dr. Koff said, and he said he was terribly witty, terribly into Latin, and they had a lot in common at that level because Dr. Koff is a big fan of the Latin language and loves to teach
studies,
it.
Yeah.
And, he just talked about his sarcasm and wit and how brilliant he was and some of the Scalia decisions.
I think basically there are a couple of things, well, maybe three things we can deal with there. First of all, his death, frankly, is a little strange. He's in this secluded ranch setting. He's has no security. He's told his security people not to come, so he's there by himself. And next morning, he's dead. Now, again, it could be all perfect. I'm not claiming there's any kind of conspiracy or anything of that sort there, but we really don't know what Justice Scalia was doing out there on the ranch. And we may not. I mean, it's made even more suspicious by the way the family has rushed to avoid an autopsy and the way the authorities around the ranch have got some judge miles away to declare a natural death. I mean, the whole thing is really strange. But be that as it may, we'll let the conspiracy theorists play with that further. The other point, of course, is Scalia was very bright, and he was very impressed by how bright he was. And interestingly enough, of course, he was good friends with Justice Ginsburg, who I would certainly have thought would precede Justice Scalia. As you know, Justice Ginsburg has had pancreatic cancer for the last 2 years, which is a terminal diagnosis, but she seems to be hanging in there, and she and Scalia, of course, were great fans of the opera, and both very bright people, so they were very good friends, even though Scalia was a far end of the conservative spectrum, and Ginsburg pretty far on the left the spectrum. It's kind of interesting when I talk to Justice Thomas when he visited here, kind of pushed Scalia and his relationship to Scalia, and Justice Thomas, frankly, had not much to say about Scalia. He was not the idea that somehow he was following Scalia's approach to the Constitution. He pretty much rejected that. So here you have Clarence Thomas, who's a fan of NASCAR racing and the Dallas Cowboys and that sort of thing, and Scalia, whose tastes run quite a bit different. So I think, frankly, they didn't have much to do with each other. Plus, as you know, Thomas rarely ever speaks from the bench during oral argument. I think it's been 10 years since he said anything. And Scalia did nothing but speak from the bench during oral argument and prided himself on his witticisms and his sarcasm and his ability to put lawyers on the defensive. Thomas thought that was a lot of showmanship and showboating, and he frankly didn't have much use for it. And I must say, I think Scalia was really getting over the line here the last few years with some of his comments. Be that as may, he still was a very able justice and, has contributed a lot to constitutional theory. And finally, of course, who is going to replace him is the issue, and how the President and the Senate are going to fight this out. And I think, frankly, it would behoove everybody to end up with a really fine appointment. There are some really bright people out there, people who could be seen as reasonably moderate. I don't know whom President Obama will nominate, but the advantage the Republicans have is, of course, they have control of the Senate right now. And 18 months from now, they may not, which I think is one concern that McConnell has. And I think going in the back of his mind is that this appointment is absolutely key to conservatives, and in the numerous Senate races he has to deal with this year, he may feel by leaving it vacant, he can bring in much more conservative money into these races, because it's important to hold on to the Senate in this respect. I don't know if that's what's in the back of his mind or not, but they could backfire in the sense that people will be turned off by an unwillingness to give due credence to a candidate who might be really quite good. I don't know. Again, I don't know whom Obama's going to appoint. So there are three aspects there that deserve a little attention, and certainly will be getting a lot of attention, I'm sure. Should we say anything more about Justice Scalia then?
Well, I did want to ask you your thoughts and predictions on South Carolina.
Oh, South Carolina. That's the Republican primary coming up tomorrow.
Yes, and by the way, Dr. Heineman, not to be self-promotional, but you know who, AM 1480 WLEA, will be having all the coverage from ABC from, I believe, 7 o'clock on.
I see. Well, that's great. People can get the returns as they're coming in, huh?
Driving around your car, listening to WLEA Saturday night.
Right. Well, I guess it could be something to do, yeah.
Or stay inside, whichever is better for you.
Okay. Well, I think there's some interesting aspects there. First of all, the governor has come out and endorsed Rubio. I don't know what's going on there. Apparently she endorsed Romney the last time around, and Gingrich won the primary. I think if you're going to endorse people, you should have the clout to be able to see that they win. And so I don't know what direction that's going. Maybe Nikki Haley, who I think is a very fine candidate, very fine governor, has seen the writing on the wall and thinks that, in fact, Rubio is going to win that primary, which would then make sense for her to go ahead and endorse him and get credit for helping pushing him over the hump there. And I think that's a possibility. I think Rubio is coming on strong down there right now. On the other hand, if you're going to endorse somebody, then I think you better have the clout behind it. So but be that as it may, that aspect is kind of interesting. But also, I think it is Saturday is going to be kind of a defining day, I think, in some respects. I think if Jeb does not do particularly well, I think he's going to drop out.
Do you really? Because he's been very stubborn about that so far.
I know, but this is one that they should win. And it doesn't look like they're going to come anywhere near winning. Although I do think George W., I think he's popular in South Carolina. And I think he and Laura are probably helping Jeb in that respect. But it is kind of interesting to notice the difference between the two of them campaigning. Old W still has the pizzazz out there on the hustings, and Jeb just can't get it rolling. He just doesn't have the personality to maximize his strength out there. So I wouldn't be surprised that they'll be really considering pulling out. Also on Saturday, and I don't want to get away from South Carolina too far here, if Hillary runs into another buzzsaw in Nevada, which it looks like very much like she's going to do, she's not going to pull out, don't get me wrong there, but I think that would throw her staff and her campaign again back into total chaos. And my understanding is things are very nasty on her campaign staff now because Bernie is moving and I think has a good chance of winning or coming very, very close to her in Nevada. In fact, I think he has a good chance. So the union workers out there, I think, are going to be very supportive of Bernie and his many offerings to the working class. Also, I think in South Carolina, we'll have to see the effects of the Pope's dialogue with Mr. Trump. I see the Pope has suggested that Mr. Trump may lack a little something in the area of a Christian morals, Christian approach to the world there.
Dr. Heinemann, that's exactly what we're going to talk about when we get back from our break. 60 seconds, we'll Fox News. Hold that thought. We'll be back. Back on Newsmaker Show. Brian O'Neill on with Dr. Robert Heinemann. And Dr. Heinemann, your thoughts on what the Pope said about Donald Trump not being Christian, because Christians don't build walls, they build bridges.
Well, I think there's a number of points there. I do kind of agree the Pope has no business discussing the substance of American politics, but he's already pitched in, I guess, on climate change and things of that sort. But we'll just have to wait. I mean, after all, Trump has called Rubio a liar, he's called Cruz a liar, he's called George W. a liar. I think he might be edging up to call the Pope a liar. I'm not sure here. So we'll just have to see how he plays that. I don't think it'll make too much difference in South Carolina. I don't know that the Catholic vote is all that strong in South Carolina, but still, the ability to irritate people and be really nasty toward people, I think, is beginning to wear a little thin there in terms of Trump's campaign. And so I think the Pope just adds a little extra there.
If I could, Dr. Heinemann.
Well, go ahead, yes.
As we were speaking, I noticed on Facebook that I got a message. Not that I'm multitasking or talking on Facebook while I'm talking to you.
Well,
I just happened to notice it because it popped up in the corner of my screen. I wasn't on Facebook.
Go ahead,
Well,
Brian.
anyways, I noticed there's this huge string of Catholic college graduates all in their 40s now. And they're debating, and they brought up some interesting points. Do you mind if I read a couple of lines from Facebook
well,
here?
It's your show, Brian. I just here to talk.
Okay. There's basically two viewpoints here. One viewpoint is it's wrong for a Catholic to criticize the Pope. Another view is that you do have a right to criticize the Pope in this situation. So let me read a couple lines here. This is from someone, I won't name the names here. This is from someone who believes it's wrong to criticize the Pope. Sad that my Catholic relatives bash the Vicar of Christ more than my atheist relatives do. And here's a response. Just because someone is Pope does not mean he's perfect. The Pope is getting involved with U.S. politics. I think it's fine to disagree with the Pope on immigration policy in the U.S., and he goes on to cite examples that the Vatican has a wall and the Vatican has very strict
I've seen
immigration
that.
rules.
Right.
And one person wrote, I seem to remember a large wall around the Vatican. And then another supporter of the Pope says, whatever happened to who am I to judge? And then the person that was said to said, who are you to judge me? Dr. Heinemann.
The idea of a wall around, and again, this has nothing to do with Christianity. It has to do with what America is all about. And America is not all about building a wall to prevent immigrants from coming in. Now, I have no problem with keeping track of immigrants and limiting immigrants and doing background checks and all that sort of thing at all. But the country is built on immigration, and talking about Justice Scalia, for example, his parents were immigrants from Italy, and you can go on and on about that. So the idea that this Trump's entirely parochial approach is just playing upon emotions, which really aren't particularly healthy in terms of America and American exceptionalism. So you can play with Christianity if you want to on that, but I think in terms of Americans generally, Trump's positions are just just outrageous. Unfortunately, there are plenty of people out there yet who succumb to this kind of emotionalism, and as one of my friends noted yesterday, he'll still get that 25% of the vote. But again, that's the 25% that thinks that Elvis Presley is still alive up there in Memphis. So there's a certain sort of bottom level there that you're just not going to get them to change their minds. On the other hand, how many of those guys actually vote? It's kind of hard to tell. So it just adds a little bit more flavor to the race there, Brian, and
no doubt
could
about
make
it.
Saturday pretty interesting.
This is the first time in my lifetime that I remember a back and forth between a pope and a presidential candidate. You've seen things where popes condemn a war or urge this president or that president to stay out of this war or that war. I think that happened both with the Iraq war between John Paul II and George W. Bush, and I think that also happened with Lyndon Johnson and Paul VI. I don't know if Paul VI talked to Lyndon Johnson, but I think Paul VI was saying things like war never again, war never again. There was some French phrase for that, which I don't know.
Yeah.
But Paul VI might have even said that at the UN. I believe he did. But this is the first time that it's gotten he is. Way. Would you attribute that to the internet?
Well, I think obviously it's going to get a lot of social media play there. But no, I think Pope Francis has already made comments about climate change. And obviously he was in Mexico. He was praying at the border. It clearly was a current issue on his mind. And I'm not certain he brought it up, frankly. I think he was being questioned by a reporter and then responded as he did. But I think it was a topical kind of issue, and he felt he had to give his particular opinion, which I think, many years back, centuries back, the Pope said something, he had the troops to back him up. But today it's a moral statement, and again, in American politics, I'm not sure how far morality goes.
And you're kind of referring to the Papal States there, and of course, modern times.
Right, I'm contrasting those. Yeah.
Little 1800s to the 21st century references. Dr. Robert Heinemann, we've talked about South Carolina, the Pope and Donald Trump and their back and forth. We've talked about the death of Justice Scalia. Were there any topics you wanted to cover?
Well, I think people should be watching Nevada pretty closely. And I think tied into that is increasing concern about Hillary's health. I see she's wearing the thick glasses again, and apparently those are to deal with double vision. I think, again, we made that point again and again on this show that I think she has some pretty serious health problems, and we'll just have to keep an eye on that. But I think the ability of Bernie to play to the union service workers in Nevada, I think, is going to be pretty impressive. And that, again, in terms of Saturday becoming a defining day, I mean, it could be pretty tough on the Clinton people. So I think I wouldn't spend all my time worrying about and looking at South Carolina. I think, of course, Nevada will be later in the day, so you might have to stay up a little later on Saturday night.
Actually, ABC's covering both of those.
Are they? Well, then I'll have to be driving around
listening to it on AM 1480 WLEA Hornell, where ABC is next.
Where we urge everybody to tune in. Yes.
Thanks for listening.